Welcome to Cosmic Wand, the free library of your favorite fictions, fanfictions and many more. Make sure to subscribe and be part of our family. Now let's begin. Harry loved winter. Winter brought snow and frost that glittered a happy greeting in the pale moonlight. Ice formed in crystallized clusters along the low limbs of the bare trees. It was a cold beauty that was familiar to him. Before he had gotten his Hogwarts letter, his winters with the Dursleys had been spent outside. They did not care if he got sick or if he froze. It was the only time Harry could ever recall being happy in his childhood. He had felt safe, protected by the snowflakes that danced a slow dance with the wind about his head as he sat in the tiny park in Surrey. After he received that letter, he began to lose his close relationship with winter. The warmth of friendship and acceptance drew him in, away from winter's frigid embrace. Harry would not realize this until the summer after every year, when there was no comfort to be had from the abuse of his only relatives. He would mourn silently, but no matter how much he regretted breaking that bond every year, that deceiving warmth would once again pull him in. He found out later that it was, indeed, a very deceptive, cruel, false sort of warmth. No one stayed by his side as the war with Voldemort progressed into their 5th year. It was almost too easy in the end. As 5th year came to a close, Voldemort sent a vision to Harry depicting the torture of his godfather, the only person Harry could trust after the betrayal of his 2 best friends. He had gone to anyone who would listen, and by the time they set out, only 3 people joined him. Neville and Luna had come, along with Ginny Weasley, who felt that it was the least she could do after what her brother had done. But it had been a trap and they were horribly outnumbered. Soon after the attack began, the order arrived. The tides turned quickly, and for a split second, Harry thought that everything would work out. Until, without a sound it seemed, Sirius fell through the veil and was lost forever. Everything he was trying to avoid happened in an instant, and it was his entire fault. His blood ran cold and his eyes flashed with despair and rage. He was giving chase to the one responsible before he even knew what he was doing. Everything after that was a blur of desperation and fury that he could not bring himself to remember. By the time he was thinking straight, Voldemort was gone forever. It was explained to him vaguely that Voldemort had attempted to possess him, but his magic had been in such a state of chaos in response to his emotions that it had torn the snake apart from the inside. He did not pay much attention after that. He now had no one. Neville and Luna might have been his friends, but he knew that they did not know what Ron and Hermione had done. That summer was the worst one. Harry had no one to rescue him or protect him anymore. The cupboard was once again his room, and the beatings, which had never really gone away, became frequent again. The games started up again. Harry had never liked these games when he was too little to comprehend what was happening, except that it hurt and he just wanted it to stop. But he knew now, and that only made it worse. 6th year started again with no one the wiser, and this time, when winter came, Harry welcomed it as an old friend. Flurries of snow once again danced around him to a silent melody only the wind knew, and despite everything wrong in his life, he was happy. He was content to watch the snow fall and the lake freeze. Winter was once again his only comfort. As the days got colder, he began to venture farther than the lake. He would stare longingly out the forest edge before turning away, whispering, "Tomorrow, tomorrow," until finally, he stepped into the tree line and disappeared into the shadowed depths. The snow became scattered along the ground as the trees thickened. Harry began to feel a light wisp of foreign magic brush with his own, so he expanded his own to take it in. He nearly collapsed. This magic was so pure. It was raw, refreshing, like peppermint, and so addicting. He could not stop himself from drawing more into him, mixing it with his own. He was distantly aware of a delicate but eternal bond settling snugly into the back of his mind. He was even less aware of the changes to his person. The very tips of his raven curls bled into a slivery white, and shavings of ice flecked across the emerald of his eyes like stained glass. His body temperature dropped sharply without his notice, and his once tan skin became white as unblemished snow. His face and body became more curved as the bond strengthened. When Harry opened his eyes, the first things he saw were the large, ice blue eyes of a teenage boy. He was a much taller teenage boy with wild, windswept hair as white as snow, who wore a blue hooded jacket that seemed to have frost on it and worn brown pants. He was also barefoot and carried a staff that was almost taller than he was. The staff looked delicate, but Harry could tell that it was very powerful. He almost reached out to touch it when he realized that the magic coursing through that staff was the same as before. This boy must be where it came from. The boy leaned lazily against the staff and smirked. "Hey there, kid." Harry blinked in silent astonishment. I'm sorry. Do I know you?" "Nope." The boy popped the P as he replied. "Name's Jack Frost." "Oh." Harry responded shortly before his eyes suddenly lit in recognition. "Oh, I know you. My aunt used to tell my cousin all kind of stories about Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy. You were mentioned a few times. But I thought they were just stories." "Ha!" Jack exclaimed. "I'm too awesome to be some made-up story." Harry was about to reply but sneezed, snowflakes being lodged into the air all around them. Jack blinked repeatedly before, with curiosity shining brightly in his eyes. He raised his hand and tapped an ice-cold finger against Harry's nose. He sneezed again, snowflakes drifting in the air around them. Jack burst into laughter. "Usin. Gee," his staff to hold him up as each bot nearly had him doubled over. "Oh, this is just great. I'm calling you Snowflake." Harry huffed indignantly. "My name is Harry." "So?" Jack questioned lightly. "I like Snowflake." With that, Jack tapped his nose, causing him to sneeze once more. "That's just too cute." "I'm not cute," Harry growled. "I am a cunning, vicious panther. Or something." Jack snorted, a mischievous smirk spreading across his face. "More like a kitten, named Snowflake." Harry glared and twisted on his heel, preparing to walk away. Jack Frost was bothersome. He might have been the spirit of his favorite season, and yes, Harry did feel very connected to him, but he was very annoyed right then. He only made it a few steps before Jack was once again in front of him, looking apologetic. "Ah, don't leave. I won't make you sneeze again." He put on his best kicked puppy look. "And you won't call me Snowflake?" Jack opened his mouth to reply before appearing to think it over. "Sorry, can't do that." Harry sighed in exasperation. "Fine." Jack whooped excitedly, making it snow more. The magic from earlier washed over Harry again. He leaned closer, trying to take in more, and this time his magic searched out the source, and he knew that he was not the only one to feel it this time. The bond that was so faint before now jumped to the forefront of both of their minds. Their eyes locked. They both knew now that they would need the other's magic around them at all costs. That was how magical bonds worked. "Wow," Jack whispered in awe. "The others are going to be so jealous." Harry laughed. He was so happy. "When you say others, you mean Santa, right?" "Yeah, and Tooth and Sandy." "What about the Easter Bunny?" Harry questioned softly. "Oh, him." Jack huffed. "He's a grumpy old kangaroo that can't take a joke." Jack mumbled. Suddenly, his head snapped up in excitement. "I'll just take you up to North's place and introduce you to everyone." Harry became excited and nodded vigorously. Maybe now he could ask why Santa had never given him anything. Harry loved to fly. The wind whipped around his hair playfully, beckoning him to dance as the snowflakes did. He felt weightless and untouchable in the air. No one could hurt him up there. He was fast and cunning, which were great strengths to have as a seeker on a Quidditch team. But just as winter was abandoned for his false hopes, flight was ripped from him in ill-hidden contempt and hatred. For reasons Harry would never fully understand, Dolores Umbridge loathed him. It could be that her position in the politics of the Ministry had corrupted her, or maybe it was just that she, with all her wickedness, was frightened of the truth he so stubbornly threw at her. Either way, he was no longer allowed to fly in school. Now, though, Jack Frost stood a ways ahead of him, a reassuring smile flitting easily across his face. "I swear, it's just like flying on a broom," Jack said patiently, "except without any support and a long fall should anything go wrong," Harry stated bluntly. He was hesitant more with the unfamiliarity of broom-less flight than with the thought of flying in and of itself. "You would be too had so. Me one explained to you in few words that the wind will just hold you up and take you places." Still, Harry could not help but feel anticipation and excitement bubble through his bloodstream. This was flying, Harry thought. The only thing you were natural at. Jack sighed. "Look, I'll help you." Just don't think too hard about it. It'll come naturally. Harry snorted derisively. I'm sure. Come on. Don't you want to meet the others? Jack questioned slyly, dangling the bait. Harry shifted, throwing a furtive glance in Jack's direction, proving that yes, Harry very much wanted to meet the others. The stubborn set of his jaw tightened minutely before he sighed, the tension in his shoulders releasing. He slumped and took a tiny step forward, giving in. Not that he put up much of a fight to begin with. Jack smirked. Good. He shifted closer, wrapping a supportive arm around Harry's stomach. Before any minds could change, they were up in the air, supported only by the wind. At first, the only emotion Harry could feel was terror, and he clung to Jack like a lifeline, which was not too far from the truth if he thought on it. Next there was the rush. Adrenaline pumped lowly, like molten lava, through his system. And his grip on Jack's jacket lessened. The ride was smooth and fast, and joy spiked across his body. He closed his eyes and shifted, letting the wind whip around him. Flying without a broom was almost as exhilarating as the bonding of their magic. He could dance with the wind like never before. He could hear the beautiful melody that only the wind used to know. Soft chuckles, somewhere to his left, made him look into the smiling face of his companion. Look at that, Snowflake, you are a natural. Harry looked down to find himself on his own and laughed joyously, not even a ring that Jack had moved away without warning him. He was flying. He was flying. He was dancing the same dance as the snowflakes he so loved. He fleetingly thought that Jack was right to call him Snowflake before dismissing it. He really did not like that name. Jack glided alongside, balanced precariously on his staff. He would not fall, Harry knew, because Jack was too good at what he did to fall. He was smirking with triumph, looking far too proud of himself, but Harry let him be for now. He wanted to enjoy his time in the air, and one could not simply relax while plotting sweet revenge on unsuspecting winter guardians. It just was not done. All too soon, it seemed, the temperature dropped dramatically, and Harry spotted what could only be Santa's workshop. Large furry creatures dotted the ground around the place, guarding it. At least, that was what it looked like they were doing. Jack waved merrily, and some waved back while others turned icy glares before doing a double take as they spotted Harry. One in particular seemed especially startled and ran inside. Yetis, Jack explained. Elves are pretty useless around here. All they do is eat and sleep and light themselves on fire. Harry winced. How awful. I take it they don't make the toys then. That's right. North lets them think they can, but they would ruin everything if they were actually allowed to do anything. Harry smirked. Sounds disastrous. Geez, so, I'm afraid. Jack bemoaned. Harry giggled lightly and followed Jack to an open window in the roof. He had the sudden impression that he was breaking and entering Santa's workshop. He became wary and flew closer to Jack as they entered, frost creeping across the window in twisting patterns. The room they found themselves in was spacious and high-tech. A large globe rose imposing before them. Thousands of twinkling lights representing something Harry did not know. Yetis and tiny beings he could only assume were the elves ran back and forth in organized chaos. In the middle of it all, a large man stood, bellowing orders with a thick, Russian accent. Niet, the man shouted, the Russian word echoing. I said to paint this red. It is not red, is blue. Christmas too close for such mistakes. The poor Yeti grumbled incoherently and stepped back to his place beside a large stack of pale blue RC trucks. Hey North, Jack hollered. Need any help, Jack? North exclaimed while drawing the young spirit into a crushing hug. As good to see you. Christmas will be white this year, yes. Jack laughed and nodded, squirming slightly in North's hold. He was ed down quickly when the Guardian of Wonder spotted Harry. You brought guest. Harry waved shyly and shifted nervously between each foot as North stood towering over him. A joyful spark ignited in High's eyes, and he let off a thunderous laugh. He stooped to look at Harry more closely while smiling pleasantly. You are another little winter sprite. How wonderful. North, don't crowd him or you'll scare him off. Jack joked lightly. Nonsense. I am Santa Claus. Child will love me, North argued. Besides, the tiny boy is cute. Be glad that Tooth is not near here. Harry watched with a fleeting smile, hands twisting nervously into the fabric of his oversized pants. He wanted to ask his question so badly, but what if he offended the large man? Perhaps he really was just on the naughty list. Was there a record for how long one could be on that list? He would need to find that out as well, later. North noticed quickly that something was wrong with the small ice spirit. He seemed sad and hesitant about some internal decision. What troubles you, child? Harry looked up and took in the sight before him. Here was the man that he had always known existed, a man that had never given him anything that he knew of. Who was supposed to make good boys and girls happy? Was Harry not good enough? Or was he really just as worthless as his uncle claimed? How bad do you have to be to get onto the naughty list? Jack smirked. Pretty bad, I'd say. Yes, you would know such things. North threw in. You know he has record. He directed his question to Harry but did not give him time to answer. Bah, of course you know. He is Jack Frost. He leaned forward. Now what is it you really want to ask? How come I never got anything? Harry blurted. For Christmas, I mean, I never got a gift or anything. I tried really hard to, and I never understood why Dudley got so much. I mean, he was always beating on other kids and I never did. Harry stopped, unable to finish. He knew he was being stupid for asking such a thing. North did not have to explain anything to him. What was he thinking? Are you Harry Potter? Harry's head snapped up in shock. North nodded sadly. I remember you. Yo, you were only child who can safely say they have never been on naughty list. Of course I took interest. That cousin of yours was nasty child, always on naughty list. Look, he raised his arms and Harry S. Ah, the two lists tattooed there for the first time. See list. I will not try to find your name. Why should I? It takes too long and I checked twice already. But I know you are on this list. He points vaguely to his left arm, where the word, nice, was scrawled. And I know you hold record for nicest child. I have left you many gifts. I never got them. Harry stated redundantly, realization dawning on his face. Why hadn't he seen it? Of course Dudley would be given any present that was addressed to Harry. Why would the Dursleys ever let him have anything? He was so stupid. I'm sore. Don't say sorry. Jack interrupted. He smiled when Harry looked at him, trying to cheer him up. It wasn't your fault. This Dudley kid sounds like a loser. Harry gave a watery laugh, tears leaking slowly down across his cheeks. He rubbed it then furiously, embarrassed. Sorry, I'm not usually such a sobbing mess. Jack threw an arm securely around Harry's shoulders, pulling him into a small half-hug. Don't worry about it, he said easily. We're gonna make it up to you this year. North'll let you ride the sleigh. I'm sure Bunny won't miss an egg or two. It'll be great, Snowflake. Harry's eye lit brighter than a Christmas tree. Really? North's booming laugh echoed around the large room. Yes, it will be best Christmas party yet. Trust me, I know what I'm saying. Now we go for ride in sleigh. Everyone loves the sleigh, except Kangaroo. Jack tosses out. That is fluke. Harry giggled softly. Why now though? Wouldn't it be better to wait until things calmed down to just leave? He SWT his gaze over the still working Yetis and the not so helpful elves. I can wait. Calm down. Things never calm down here, Jack answered him. It goes from chaotic to more chaotic. The calmest day is Christmas Day and the elves get so drunk off eggnog they try to steal North's ride. North protested loudly. That was once. You were not even there. Jack smirked widely. Shows what you know. North snorted, playfully popping Jack in the back of the head. This is why you hold record. Jack rubbed at his head sheepishly before shrugging it off. He turned to Harry and made a face when he thought the larger man wasn't looking, earning another pop and a snicker. They came to a stop at the sleigh and Jack did a fist-pumping motion before grabbing Harry up under the arms and setting him in the first seat beside North. This is the best seat. I could have done it myself, Harry stated stubbornly. Really? Jack asked in faked surprise. I thought you could use some help, what with your height, or lack of it. I hate you. Whatever you say, Snowflake. What is with Snowflake? North cut in. Jack looked between the two for a moment. Harry narrowed his eyes dangerously. Don't even think about it, Harry whispered harshly. Jack wiggled the fingers of both hands, a mischievous glint in his eye. No. Harry attempted to get away by crawling into the back with no success. Jack held his waist in a strong grip, and reached up to his face, getting closer and closer. One loud sneeze later, North found himself and his sleigh covered in a light dusting of snow, leftover snowflakes getting caught in his beard. Seconds later the sleigh was shaking with his laughter. "How does that work? It is cute." Harry just glared at the both of them and shoved Jack over the side of the sleigh. "Jerk. You love it." Jack was once again on the sleigh. "Let's go pay Bunny a visit." "Yes, I am sure he will love our little snowflake." Harry groaned. The Easter warren was decidedly the brightest place Harry had ever been to. The grass was a lush green and soft underfoot, shining with dew in the morning rays. Above, the sky was a light azure and cotton clouds rolled listlessly along its vast blankness, occasionally blocking the sun. Cutting through the warren was a vivid, lazy river of color, which Harry assumed was for painting eggs. He wondered briefly if the Easter Bunny would be awfully mad if he went for a relaxing float. He could certainly use the cool-off what with the air being as warm as it was. Harry slid closer to Jack, hoping to keep cooler that way. Apparently, now that he was some kind of unofficial winter pixie, Jack's words anything warmer than 32 degrees was like the middle of summer for other people. It never affected Jack, because he brought winter with him. He was winter. Harry thought it a little unfair but logic, and was not that just completely ironic, had a way of disagreeing. A cool sensation spread over him from the very tips of his toes to the sparkling white in his hair, telling him that Jack had noticed how uncomfortable he was. The now familiar tinge of peppermint entertained his senses until his own new winter magic began to work in order to keep the cold where it was needed. Harry smiled happily up at Jack, who had taken the back seat and was currently standing behind him, prepared to exit the sleigh almost as soon as they landed. "Yah." CK beamed back, and Harry took notice to how his nose scrunched and his eyes almost shut when he did that. It was cute. The sleigh pitched forward and North steered it safely out of the way for a soft landing. He jumped out first and offered a hand to help Harry down, which he declined respectfully. He was not completely useless that he could not get down himself. A few hops later brought him to the ground, where he was immediately accosted by hundreds of tiny eggs. North had apparently landed right in the middle of their ranks. "Ah," Harry cooed. He crouched down and plucked a smaller one from its place in line, cupping it in both hands. The little egglet squirmed for a moment, obviously not expecting his journey to have hindrance, before seeming to get comfortable in his grasp. He drew his thumb across the smooth, unblemished shell in admiration. This was one of the Easter Bunny's eggs. He had by no means been allowed out to the hunt every year, but had seen as other children found beautiful painted eggs evidently left to them by a giant rabbit. He had always wanted one. "Look, Jack, aren't they cute?" The air beside him shifted as Jack knelt next to him and placed a cold hand between his shoulder blades. "I guess so," he said neutrally, though personally he was a bit biased towards the negative with anything that came to be related to Bunny Month. The guy had some kind of pole lodged so far up his butt that it messed with his brain. That was not to say that Jack hated him, because he didn't. He enjoyed his company when he was being civil, but ever since the blizzard of '68 those times were hard to come by. Harry caught the almost falseness in his tone but did not question it. He had realized quickly that Jack had some rivalry with the guardian rabbit. He did not mind because, in his opinion, rivalry was healthy to an extent, and humbling at times. It was a lesson. Shaking the thought from his head for the moment, Harry once again rubbed his thumb along the smooth white surface, feeling the urge to paint it. Even as the thought slipped into his head, delicate, detailed pictures danced across the egg from the pad of his fingers, meshing together until all white W. As gone, and the remaining image was that of a powder blue snowflake on a backdrop of yellow. The picture gave Harry the odd imagery of snow on a sunny summer day. Jack stared at the picture in awe. Kangaroo will shrivel up in envy. The Easter Bunny, outclassed by a teenager. He fell to laughing, almost pushing Harry over when he began to lean on him for support. North came over to assess what had happened, handling the egg gently when Harry offered to let him see. "As beautiful. I will need to let you paint toys now, huh? Give Yeti's weekend." He chuckled. "They grumble far too much." "What's going on?" "Air." A deep, Australian voice carried around the warren. Harry was startled and found he was glad that North was holding the egg. He would have dropped it otherwise. Stood before him was a giant rabbit. Nearly 7 feet it seemed, with gray, fluffy fur. Dark tribal markings stretched across the guardian's arms and legs, giving Harry the impression of a warrior. A belt was slung across his chest, holding several painted Easter eggs. He carried himself like a fighter, a contrast to the others. "Who's this? What are ya doin'? Oh this." North gestured loosely towards the 2 winter spirits. "This is new spirit. Come meet Snowflake." "Harry." The smallest one cut in. North blinked. "As what I said. Another frostbite." Harry could tell that the large bunny was none too thrilled with the thought of another Jack Frost flying around, freezing things. Harry knew he would have gone mental had another Draco Malfoy appeared. North pressed his egg back into his hand, possibly only just remembering it, and laid a hand on his shoulder, guiding him closer to the puka. They seemed to have a sort of staring contest before the rabbit extended one large paw. Aster Bunnymund. Don't care much what ya call me. Just not kangaroo. Harry Potter. Please call me Harry. Just Harry." The younger spirit shot Jack a reproachful glance. "None of this snowflake business if you don't mind." Jack looked affronted. "Aw, come on Snow. Why you gotta be so mean? It's cute." "No it isn't." Harry shot back quickly. "And you can't just shorten a nickname. It's redundant." "Alright then, Snowflake, let's see what Bunny has to say." Jack took 3 steps before a snowball smacked him in the nose. Harry blinked, staring at his hand, experimentally forming another ball out of nowhere. Then he whooped, jumping around in triumph. "Take that, slush puddle." Jack sputtered indignantly as Bunnymund bowed forward, not even trying to contain his laughter. North watched from the sidelines with ill-concealed amusement. "Oh, I like that one, mate." Bunnymund applauded when he finally caught his breath enough to stand straight. Harry mock bowed, feeling pride shoot through him. That snowball as the first controlled use of his new ice magic, and it meant that his magic was settling well with the bond. The egg squirmed as it had when it was first picked up, reminding Harry of its presence once more. "Oh, whatcha got there?" Bunny asked curiously, and Harry glanced at him sheepishly. He held the egg out, allowing Aster to take it. The puka ran critical eyes over it, taking in every detail before smiling widely. "That's a beauty, kid. Couldn't 'a done much better myself." He gave it back carefully. "Keep it," Harry squealed, which he would later deny, and thanked Bunnymund profusely. He ran to Jack and chattered about random things, Jack listening attentively to every word. He could listen to Harry talk for hours. He sat down, tugging Harry with him to sit close beside him. His staff lay discarded to his right, just within arm's reach. Jack reclined back, holding himself with his palms and letting Harry rest his head on his left shoulder as he talked. Bunnymund hopped to North's side. "So what's the deal? Mim Neva mentioned anything about a newbie?" North chortled. "This is because Man in Moon did not make new spirit." "But," Bunny began to protest before something seemed to click. His eyes almost popped out of his head. "That kid woulda had to Avenue been a magic user for that." North hummed softly while tapping the side of his nose. "Exactly, Bunny, Harry is record holder for nice list." Bunny snorted. "Figures Frostbite'd find his opposite." "I would not say opposite," North stated. "More like complementary. They're not colors, mate." "Bah, is beside the point." As they talked, Harry and Jack grew silent, content to watch the egglets march by until they either fell asleep or the number of little eggs dwindled. As time went on and the sun sank lower in the sky, North decided it was time to leave. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve and he could not leave the elves to their own devices much longer. There were no complaints because Harry had fallen to sleep on Jack's shoulder, and Jack, in an attempt to let him sleep, was now stiff and tired from being still so long. Harry was placed in the back by North and Jack was about to follow before a heavy paw fell on his shoulder. He gave Bunny a confused look, but he simply jerked his head, indicating Jack to follow him until they were out of North's earshot. "How'd it happen? How did what happen?" Jack asked confused. "De bond, frostbite. Ya do realize what you got there, right?" Bunny questioned skeptically, giving Jack a look. "Well," Jack started hesitantly, "I know that we're kinda connected through our magic or whatever. That happened in the forest when he started drawing in my magic." "Drawin' in? Ya didn't give it to I am. Jack narrowed his eyes in thought. Well yeah, I guess I sorta did. I mean, I didn't just randomly start forcing my magic on a stranger. He just kinda pulled it in and I wasn't really complaining. It felt nice. The last part was said almost as an afterthought. Bunnyman's eyes widened for a second. He had seen magical bonds. They could only happen under two circumstances. 1. Both parties had to be magical. That was a no-brainer. One's magic cannot bond with something that is not there. 2. Both parties must give their magic willingly from the beginning. They must both know what they are doing. Jack, ya can't just draw in someone's magic. Musta been real powerful to do it. So this has happened before. Well yeah, Bunnyman said. Happened with North and his wife. Mary was just a witch from Russia when he met her. Fell in love, yada yada, so they bonded. Whoa, I kind of thought Mrs. C was just the spirit of cookies or something, Jack joked lightly. Ya would think that, frostbite. Bunny commented before smirking. Me and Tooth have got a runnin' bet on if Sandy had one with Pitch. That would be mildly disturbing. Suddenly, North's booming voice called out. Jack, we need to leave now. Elves have probably destroyed workshop. Jack smirked as the image flitted across his mind. He said goodbye to Bunny who waved before hopping off, probably to check on the egglets. Jack floated to the sleigh, taking a seat beside North after checking to make sure Harry was still comfortable. North looked at him, amusement in his eyes. You care a lot for little snowflake. Is cute. You have crush. Jack's head came up so fast he nearly got whiplash. Crush. What? No. Yes. North encouraged. I just feel protective of him. A little, I guess. You guess? North questioned. No, I think you have crush. I feel it in belly. Now you just tell yourself. Is not that hard. Tell myself. Jack asked, his confusion evident. North laughed joyfully. Yes, that is first step. Then you tell other person. His eye twinkled with a knowing glint and Jack could only laugh as they took off. Heading back to the North Pole. When they were soaring safely through the air, he stood up and climbed into the back, kneeling so that his face was only inches away from Harry's. The other spirit was curled on his side, the little egg tucked securely against his chest as dream sand flew noiselessly over his head. It looked as if Harry was dreaming about the Guardians. Jack did not think that what he felt for Harry could be considered a crush. He did find him cute. Gorgeous actually. It was a fact, in his opinion, which made it a bit of an oxymoron, but he did not think too hard on it. He lifted a hand to smooth the hair out of Harry's face, taking in the scar that shone faintly in the dying light. It was peculiar in shape, like a bolt of lightning, and Jack K wondered briefly how he got it before turning his thoughts back. Maybe he did feel something for the other teen. He was cute and kind, everything that Jack did not really believe he rightfully deserved, what with his track record. He could not help but find him attractive, but he knew it was not a crush, no matter what North said, it was more than that. But Jack would not act on it, not yet unless Harry felt the same. Which would be nice. They arrived at the workshop in short time and Jack carried Harry this time, taking him to a guest room that was given to Jack as a place to sleep when he stayed over. He did not mind giving up his room. Besides, he would be going out to stretch his muscles and bring snow where it ought to be. He would be back by morning so Harry would not miss him. He could think on what he was going to get everyone for Christmas while he was at it. Before he could leave the room, Harry's small hand curled around his wrist, sleepy eyes peeking out at him from the rim of the blanket. Where are you going? Harry wondered, yawning loudly. I have to go make sure it snows, but I'll be back. Jack reassured, gently pulling his wrist out of the other's grip. Oh, okay. Be careful. With that he was asleep again, back to dreaming of the others. Jack chuckled and his heart warmed at the thought of Harry telling him to be careful every time he went out. He shook his head to dispel the thought and leaned down, placing a small kiss over the new spirit's scar. Sleep well, Snowflake. He was almost to the door when a random thought crossed his mind. He turned back, mocking his way to Harry's bedside and pulling the covers away from his face. Harry scrunched his face a little but stayed asleep. Jack smirked victoriously and placed a cool hand against his cheek. Harry smiled in his sleep. cuddling into Jack's hand as a content sigh passed through his lips. Jack only smirked wider as he drew his thumb first along that soft cheek, then, slowly, over the bridge of the smaller one's nose. No sneeze, only a twitch of sleepy irritation as the dream sand shifted, showing the image of Jack poking Harry's nose as a clear indication that Jack's personal mission wasn't a total failure. With his mischievous curiosity put to rest temporarily, Jack finally left. He had determined that he did, in fact, have feelings for Harry and that yes, he would like to have a relationship. His more than a crush with Harry would have to be sorted some other time. Maybe Christmas Day. It sounded like a plan to him. He stopped by North's office to get his staff that North had held on to for him so he could carry Harry properly, and flew from the window in a flurry of snow and ice-cold wind. When Harry woke up, it was very dark. The only light was that of the glow reaching across the floor from under the door of the room he was in. Shadows were cast over small objects scattered around, giving him the impression that the room was messy. He did not mind any of this. Shadows had always been a small comfort to him, and messes were not anything to get worked up about. Jack's absence was noted with a shy sense of discomfort, but he could hardly say it was dreadful. He would live. This time spent awake was far from silent. Whether it be the gurgling grumbles of the Yetis, the jingle-jangle of the tiny elf bells, or North's vehement orders echoing throughout the workshop, muffled by the many walls. This was all fine also, as Harry had not planned to sleep again until Jack returned. So he took the time to think. He began to wonder about the reactions of the wizarding world to his disappearance. The prophet, bane of his existence that it was, had more than likely printed some scandalous report of him running off to some centaur lover or other such rubbish. He snorted derisively, finding that thought easier to believe than he ought to. Dumbledore would be furious, of course. No pawn of his was going to immerse theirself in some twisted form of bestiality. The old coot wool, likely breath fire unto the centaur of the forbidden forest, Ron and Hermione following like loyal fleas. Harry giggled quietly into his hand, imagining plainly the look on the old headmaster's face. It would have been a sight to see. He shot up so suddenly that he almost doubled over onto his face. He could very well see their faces. He could see firsthand what his disappearance was causing in others. No one would see him. Regrettably, this also meant that those he might have considered friends would not see him either. It was a small price to pay though. He had everything he could ever want now. Voldemort was gone for good. Dumbledore's strings were severed, and Jack Frost was bonded to him in magic and friendship. Well, Harry hoped he might extend that a little beyond friendship, but he would not count his eggs before they hatched. A soft shuffling sound and the gentle ting of a small bell alerted him to the elf outside the door. He flopped back against the pillow and hastily threw the heavy comforter he was using over his shoulders, back facing the door as he feigned sleep. The cover only just settled when the door clicked open and Harry drew in deep, hopefully sleep-like breaths to add to the act. He did not particularly care whether the little guy saw through him or not, just so long as he was left alone for now. He did not feel up to any sort of conversation with anyone right then. Quiet footfalls moved deftly about the room, implying the elf was searching for something. A small grunt of triumph emerged several feet away towards the end of the bed before more steps could be heard leaving the room. There was no thump of a door shutting, and when Harry peeked over his shoulder, he saw that it had been left ajar. Silly elf. Harry swung his legs carelessly over the side of the bed and sat staring into the lit hallway across the room. He wanted the door closed, but between his irritation and his temporary irrational sense of deserved laziness, mouthful if ever air was one, he simply could not bring himself to move any farther. So he sat and he stared until his eyes hurt. Then he waved his hand in some semblance of a wand while concentrating hard on his magic. The door slammed with an audible thud. Harry winced as, for all of a second, all other sounds stopped. Then it was over and North was once again bellowing orders across the workshop as eager elves rushed to please and Yetis complained in their odd language. He released a breath of relief, lying spread eagle across the bed as the room was once again dark. Sleep prowled along the edges of his mind, seeming to peer in like a cat not quite sure whether it should move in. He attempted to keep it at bay for at least a while longer, but his rational side said that Jack would be back that much fast if he slept. So he allowed himself to drift. line break hash. The next time he woke, he was faced with large, curious violet eyes. Harry had been faced with many strange things before, and normally he would simply blink and shrug it off. This time, however, he was shocked into a state of girlish screaming, followed by the echoing sound of the tooth fairy getting the feathers slap out of her. Harry was apologizing almost immediately to the poor girl, who fluttered nervously a little way off, massaging her cheekbone and attempting to smile with reassurance. "Oh no, sweetie, it's entirely my fault. I have a problem with personal space. Bunny said I should really GE." Just as Tooth began to ramble, North burst in through the door, wielding his twin swords. What is with screaming? He looks around for any obvious danger. Confusion written across his face as the lists were across his arms. What has happened? Tooth chuckled nervously and flew to the big man's side. "I startled him. No need to worry. Just get right back to work, North. I understand you're busy," she explained quickly, trying to stuff North back through the doorway. The other guardian mumbled quietly to himself about Christmas Eve, and yes, is indeed very busy. Harry glanced between the two until North was out of sight and earshot before settling wide eyes on the spirit, who was obviously another guardian. She floated with a sort of grace Harry envied minutely, and was almost completely covered in bright colorful feathers, some of which could now be seen resting delicately on the floor. She reminded him a bit of a hummingbird. Harry began intelligently, nearly lost on what to say. He did not need to worry though, because she hardly gave him time to continue before she was off, speaking rapidly as she flitted around him. Amongst the babble, Harry was able to catch that this was the Tooth Fairy, which made sense because the only other guardian he has not officially met was the Sandman, and this guardian was obviously a not-so-sandy woman. Harry was taken from his thoughts by silence. Surprised, he quickly shot his gaze back to Tooth's face from where it had fallen to the floor beneath her. She had apparently asked a question because her body language was expectant and she was smiling widely. Harry coughed into his hand in embarrassment and played with the hem of his large and ratty old shirt. There was a new hole. He would need to fix that. "Sorry, but could you repeat that last part, please?" "I asked your name, dear." Tooth's smile faltered a fraction as she observed the large threadbare clothes before it grew again, this time seeming to split her face. "Right, it's Harry." The small winter spirit shuffled his feet, looking apologetic. "Do you mind telling me the time?" "Oh," Tooth exclaimed in surprise. "I forgot. I've probably lost track of time and I can't keep my baby teeth waiting so long. Did you know that your teeth are almost as perfect as Jack's? Must be a winter thing," and she went on, leading him out of the room and through the workshop to North's private office. The large man was not there, too busy with Christmas preparations to tinker around in there, but a large, Steve clock hung partially blocked along the right wall. The hands indicated that it was just turning 9, which was a sign that for Tooth to leave, much to Harry's disappointment. Despite their meeting and the fact that he really did not want to know when she had examined his teeth, he found her company calming. Tooth left with a promise to come by later and have a chat and maybe some delicious hot chocolate. Harry spun in a slow circle, taking in the little toys and tools balanced precariously on the shelves. A large table was set in the middle, its whole surface covered in ice figurines of new toy designs, and somewhere he could hear a muffled radio singing old Christmas music. One figure caught his eye and he leaned in to get a better look. The little ice sculpture was that of a teddy bear. It was incomplete as it was missing an arm and part of the other was broken off. Its eyes were meant to be large buttons and the mouth stitched in an almost heart shape. The inside of the ears and bottoms of the feet were shaven to look like plaid and a large bow wound around its neck. Harry loved the little thing instantly and picked the fragile ice up gently. It gleamed in the low light of the room. Not very long after, North came in looking for him. He set the little ice bear down with a sad sigh, and made his way past the large guardian who hesitated before shutting the door. They made their way back into the workshop, where North sat him down with a large smile. "Jack insists on practice. Try to make snow. I must get back to work." He chuckled in a jolly way, which suited him regardless of his intimidating demeanor. Also, Yetis make you new clothes. Bunny's suggestion says old clothes won't do. Harry's eye lit like a Christmas tree at the thought of new clothes, and he hugged North around the middle. His arms not quite reaching all the way back. "Thank you." "As no problem," North said, and then leaned in conspiratorially. "If wife saw a ratty shirt, she would have my head. Is good thing she visits Russia every year." Harry giggled and sat once again on the floor, letting North get back to work. Time passed fast, and, a little past noon, Jack glided into. See 3 frozen elves caught in mid-run and a snowbank nestled along the wall farthest from the large globe. North seemed to pay no attention to this save for a few furtive glances in the direction of a workstation, where Harry was chatting aimlessly to a Yeti who listened attentively, unfinished robot dangling uselessly from his large hands. You should have seen the look on his face when we finally found the nest. Spiders were everywhere. He is dreadfully afraid of the harmless little things. Well, I say harmless, but this particular bunch could grow to the size of a large car, so I suppose it was warranted. I was still under the impression that they wouldn't hurt us. Harry seemed to sense his arrival as he cut off, leaving the poor Yeti curious for more as he twisted around and flew with speed over to Jack. The first thing Jack noticed was that Harry was dressed in new clothes. His hole-infested shirt was replaced with a form-fitting, deep green sweater. The hem extended almost to mid-thigh in a stylish way rather than just being too large, and the sleeves reached over the back of his hands, just below the knuckles. Around his neck was a sparkling silver scarf that hung loosely. His legs were covered in a black pair of leggings that extending down into a pair of calf-high boots. It looked easy to move in, which was good for Harry, and the boots seemed to have good traction, not that he would really need it. It was beautiful but made Jack feel a little underdressed. He supposed that did not really bother him though, as Harry beamed at him. Jack blushed. "You look good," Jack said, mentally yelling at himself to get a grip. Harry laughed joyfully and spun with his arms out wide. "Thank you. It feels incredible to have new clothes. The Yetis made them for me and I thin. They've been studying modern girl styles. Does this look womanly to you?" Harry questioned curiously, twisting once again for Jack to get a good view. Jack chuckled. "What does it matter? You look fantastic in it either way." Harry blinked before grinning mischievously. "You know, you're absolutely right. I do look stunning, don't I? I bet all the guys will drool." "Yes," Jack answered immediately before blushing a deep red. No. I mean, you do look gorgeous, but I didn't. Wait." Harry burst into hysterical laughter, clutching his sides in pain. "Oh, your face," he gasped out between laughs. "I can't breathe." Jack's blush deepened and a sour pout formed across his face. Yeah, laugh it up, chuckles." Harry was too flushed and winded from laughter to pay much attention to that comment, but inwardly he seethed at the new nickname. It made him seem like a clown. Slowly, Harry stopped laughing, but the mirth remained adamantly in his eyes, and Jack could not bring himself to stay mad when Harry was so obviously happy. So he sighed, and drew the smaller boy into a hug. "I missed you, Snowflake." "Missed you too," Harry whispered into the crook of the other's neck. They broke AP. Arden took notice that everyone was staring, including North, with an odd little twinkle in his eyes. When he was caught, he whipped his head in the other direction, whistling a Christmas tune as he walked from station to station. Checking the Yeti's work, Jack chuckled. "He's not the type for subtlety." "Definitely not," Harry replied before seeming to remember something. "Jack, could you take me to the wizarding world after Christmas?" Jack's startled eyes snapped sharply over to the other spirit. "Why?" Harry rolled his eyes. "No need to get so defensive. I doubt they would see me. I'm just curious about how they're getting on without me." Jack sighed, unable to resist Harry's eyes. "Okay. After Christmas." The smaller of the two nodded vigorously in excitement. "All right then." Jack trailed off as he once again took in the room around him. "I take it you've been practicing like I asked." Look." Without even turning, Harry flicked his wrist and another unfortunate elf froze 3 feet away. Jack laughed. "That's awesome. You seem to pick up things pretty fast." Harry made no comment but continued to smile all the way to his ears the rest of the day, which was spent running around, freezing elves and playing a game of tag with some Yetis that did not seem to be helping with the preparations. Finally, North's rounds were about to begin and Jack and Harry sent him off, promising not to cause too much damage. When North returned early Christmas morning, he found them asleep on the couch, Jack with his head resting against Harry's legs, which were mostly tucked onto the cushion, and Harry curled into himself and down into the corner. A book lay open across the arm of the couch. North left them alone, knowing there was no way a blanket could be laid over them like that, and retired to his own room for a well-deserved nap. Harry woke up on Christmas morning with a sense of excitement and a crick in his neck. He did not mind the slight pain though. His first holiday with Jack and the Guardians. He was sure he would never experience anything better than the Christmas that was about to happen. He scanned the room to get his brain moving, still foggy with sleep, and spotted his forgotten book. A small smile stretched across his lips. The completed works of Edgar Allan Poe sat open, pages slightly bent by the position. Jack had groaned at the title and hadn't even bothered to stay awake. He did not care for reading much and loathed poetry, mostly because he could not wrap his brain around the true meaning most of the time. Harry was determined to get him to really listen one day, mostly because he liked Jack's awake company while he read. It was always a lonely thing when he read because no one bothered to sit with him while he did it. Harry sat up fully, jarring Jack a little as he did. The winter spirit merely snorted tiredly and latched onto his leg further. Harry grimaced at the small puddle of drool on his leggings and rolled his eyes. It just figured that Jack was a cuddler. Not that he minded. Well, the drool would have to stop, but Harry figured that if Jack wanted to cuddle him, he could any time he wanted. Blushing at the thought, Harry frantically searched for something to distract him. He spotted the Christmas tree, which was undecorated for the time being. That was a lot of presents. Dudley's voice echoed in his head. 36. But last year I had 37. Well, that was nothing compared to this. At least 100 presents were piled high under the tree, some huge and some tiny, but all covered in beautiful wrapping and bows. Very wrapping was different too, and Harry could guess from where he was who some of those gifts were for. As he looked, he spotted some that were glaringly obviously not wrapped by the Yetis. One look, like the entire roll of Scotch tape was plastered onto it and another had duct tape closed over the sides. Whoever wrapped that must have run out of paper. He smiled as an old saying popped into his head. It's the thought that counts. And someone obviously thought duct tape did fix everything. Probably Bunny. Harry looked down at Jack's sleeping form and mourned that he would have to wake him up in order to properly freak out over the presents. He was so cute when he slept. Nonetheless, he began running his fingers through those messy white locks and calling his name. A few minutes of this proved useless, so he tugged slightly at a fly-away hair. Jack slapped his hand away as a passing irritation and shifted, increasing his grip on Harry's leg. He huffed and tugged again, harder, but with little effect. Finally, he just got up, hoping Jack would let go. He didn't, and Harry nearly met the carpet in a hole. New way before he fixed himself and eyed Jack. The door across the room flew open with a bang as Bunny rushed in. Eyes wide as snow flurries danced around him in the cold chill outside before he slammed the door shut once more. Harry beamed and attempted to run to him, pulling a very disgruntled Jack off the couch as he did so. As the King of Winter caught his bearings, Harry glided over to the Easter Bunny and hugged him around the middle. Bunny, hi. Aster was only caught slightly off guard before he returned the hug, smiling at the excitable little sprite. Jack was now on his feet, still half asleep but amused as he walked over calmly. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes, slightly cursing the only downside to Sandy's dream sand. Harry was babbling incoherently about presents and the Christmas tree. He always started talking too fast when he was excited. Jack wondered how a habit like that started. Tooth arrived next, in through the doors that led to a balcony. A tiny fairy accompanied her this time. Said fairy was immediately in Jack's face, twittering and zooming about in adoration. Harry thought it was too cute. Unknown to him, he had begun a light snowfall, which irked Aster, but he did not have the heart to tell him to calm down. Golden sprinkles of sand announced the arrival of the Sandman, who was startled to find large green eyes looking directly into his own golden ones. He had yet to be informed of the new spirit. It made him a little mad that he wasn't informed. Mostly because this spirit was another winter spirit if the growing snowfall was any indication, and he adored season spirits. They were always so light-hearted and free-spirited. Not to mention, this one was cute. Images flickered over his head as he attempted to find answers, which Jack gave. This is Harry. We have this bond thing, and he became a spirit. Ah, bonds were very unpredictable that way. It must be under unusual circumstances if the look on Astor's face was any indication, though that could just be his irritation at the cold. Sandy prided himself on being the observant one of the group. He still had Harry's full attention, so he forms a glittering picture of a group of snowflakes before morphing it into a frowning bunny's face. He followed this with an arrow pointing toward the ceiling. Harry looked up, confused, before one of his own snowflakes hit his nose. "Oh," he exclaimed, turning to Bunny with an apology on his lips. "I'm so sorry. Why didn't you tell me? I would have stopped." Astor only shrugged and averted his eyes, not willing to admit that he had allowed it to happen because of the affection he already felt for the spirit. Jack caught his eye and smirked, seeing right through him. Bunny smirked his own, wiggling his brows and gesturing to Harry with a knowing look. Jack blushed and glared, raising his staff and shooting Astor's ears. Astor nearly fell over at the weight of the ice on his head, but caught himself, and Jack snickered quietly to himself. As this was happening, Harry was talking animatedly to Sandy, who listened intent. Lee is tooth-eyed the fighting boys with exasperated amusement. Harry suddenly turned back to them, and they stood at attention, hands at their sides and smiles stretched over their faces. The little SP. Wright gave them weird looks before slowly turning back to his conversation with Sandy, who shot a knowing look at them over Harry's shoulder. Once Harry's eyes were averted, Astor, not wanting Jack to get the last laugh, shoved him slightly with his elbow. Jack froze that too. "Hello everyone," North bellowed from the doors. "As good you are all here so early. Yetis are needing help with decorations for party." They all groaned except for Harry, who beamed in excitement. He loved decorating. It was something he was forced to do at Christmas time because Aunt Petunia couldn't be bothered. He did not mind it though. It was fun, and he always imagined that he was putting the tinsel up with his mother or topping the tree with his father. And occasionally he would imagine that he had little brought hers and sisters to decorate the tree with. Petunia had once gotten a compliment on the decorations, and Harry had beamed all that night, unable to fall asleep. North laughed at Harry's excitement. "At least I have one good helper. You are in charge of main room." He pointed purposefully at Harry before turning to the others. "You listen to him. I have seen his decorations. They are wonderful." Everything is wonderful to you," Astor mumbled. "Do not mumble, it is not becoming." 3 hours later saw the three exhausted guardians staring in awe, staring at the most beautiful tree they had seen yet. North and Harry had teamed up to decorate it. Sometimes Harry would flit down and shove an ornament into Jack's hand before dragging him off to the tree from his original task of hanging festive things all over the walls. He only did this once to Astor, and the rabbit thought it might have been because Jack had been looking exceptionally moody with twinkle lights wrapped around his shoulders and all over his head. The only thing missing was the topper. Harry came in followed by a worried North. The reason for the worry was obvious as Harry struggled under the heavy load of the huge star that would sit atop the tree. He looked determined, and Jack thought it was cute when his face scrunched up like that. When Harry reached them, he slowly lowered the star to the floor, so as not to break it. "Faye," he wheezed. "Okay, I seriously need to gain some muscle," he panted, eyeing the star in both trepidation and astonishment. "How in Merlin's name does it weigh so much? That is unreal." "As very old," North explained. "They did not use lightweight metals at time." Harry snorted. "I'll say, Jack." The older winter spirit whipped his head up, just now tuning into the conversation. "Huh, could you help me? I'm afraid I might drop it if I try lifting it up that high by myself." Jack was mildly confused before he zeroed in on the star at Harry's feet. Yeah, okay sure." He walked forward and bent with Harry, getting a firm grip on the star. They counted, if only to prepare themselves before lifting. "Holy," he exclaimed and almost lost his grip. He puffed and shifted to get a better hold. It wasn't so bad, the weight was just surprising. Harry giggled, also adjusting. They flew up together as the others watched from below. Jack had the wind hold up some of the weight, which helped some. When they got up to the top, Harry was hesitant to place the star. What if the tree couldn't hold this weight? It certainly didn't look like it would. Jack beamed in reassurance and moved so that the star was over the spot it needed to be. With one last deep breath, they lowered it and let go. It stayed and Harry sighed in relief. No one could blame him, it was really quite heavy. Once they were back on the ground, everyone made their way to the sitting area, waiting for their other guests. North explained that most of the spirits came for this Christmas party and that it was tradition to decorate the tree right before, which was why it had not been decorated before Christmas Day. As the other spirits began arriving, Harry tried to identify who they were or what they did. Cupid was pretty easy to spot, although she was not what Harry expected. A young woman, probably early 20s, in a shimmering pink, almost white, one-strap dress with a sweetheart neckline and a tutu-like hem that puffed slightly at the knees. She wore white stockings with little pink hearts but no shoes. Her blonde hair fell in large curls to her waist while her bow sat loosely over her shoulder. She carried no arrows. Next was the groundhog. He was large and grumpy and seemed to have a sort of respect for Jack that was different from the others, that was mutual. Harry figured it was Beck. They spent Groundhog's Day trying to scare the crap out of one another. When Jack introduced the groundhog, named Chuck, to Harry, Chuck immediately started cracking jokes about Jack. Harry giggled at the guy's antics and consoled an indignant Jack by cracking a joke about the overgrown mammal under his breath. Next to meet his gaze was Mother Nature, who everyone called Gaia. She was about middle-aged with a dress made of flowers and vines of all kinds. Her hair held all the colors of summer and her dress the colors of spring. She was surrounded by several little lights of different colors that sped off and returned fast than Harry could blink sometimes. This spirit held control of all the seasons in which nature held most. She was a little like an older sister to Jack, though she admitted to not really getting along with him. More and more spirits piled in and introduced themselves, and Harry experienced being coddled on more than one occasion. The last one to arrive was the spirit of autumn, who apologized profusely for being late. He was a scrawny teen, a little older than Jack on both accounts, with auburn hair that was a little long and fell just past his ears. Freckles littered his face in abundance and he had emerald green eyes which he was determined to convince Harry was a fluke. He said his name was Henry. Harry spotted Cupid gesturing wildly at him, trying and failing to be subtle as she jostled a spirit next to her. The man glared and walked off, almost seamlessly shifting into the appearance of an adolescent boy. Cupid rolled her eyes as Harry finally reached her. "Father time," she said, throwing her thumb over her shoulder. "He's a bit of a Grinch. Most people are still high on Christmas by the time New Year rolls around, which is where his sun is supposed to shine." Harry nodded in understanding. "Well, what is it, Cupid?" He didn't mean to sound rude, but Jack and Henry had gotten into an argument over the pros and cons of Sith and Jedi and Harry was intrigued. Jack was obviously a Jedi fan while Henry leaned towards Sith. Harry couldn't fathom why the spirits even knew Star Wars but figured they were the youngest and most in tune with the kids. "Well, other than Harry, well, that isn't a very nice tone," she said in way of a reprimand. "I've got a job in Southwest Oklahoma that I need to do and was wondering if you would accompany me. I usually have my helpers, but I gave them the day off in hopes that no one would find their true love today. I guess I was mistaken." Harry smiled widely. "Sure, just let me tell Jack." And he took off, interrupting the escalating argument. "Jack, he asked, taking his intense gaze off of Henry. "What? Cupid is taking me with her to her job for a little bit, okay." Jack lurched forward and grabbed his arm before Harry could run off again. "Wait, what?" Harry sighed. "Cupid needs someone to go with her on a job and asked me." "Oh, all right then. Just make sure you're back before the party ends." He turned back to Henry. "Jedi are better. Your argument is invalid." "Oh," Henry exclaimed. "You, sir, are playing a dangerous game. There will be consequences. I'll take my chances." Harry shook his head in amusement before backtracking to Cupid, who waited patiently. "Ready, puppy love," Harry sputtered, getting embarrassed. Cupid chuckled before grabbing hold of his arm and reaching into a small pouch at her side. She blew a pink dust into the air and several guardians watched as the two were whisked away by a force only Cupid understood. When Harry was able to stand properly, he took in his surroundings. They were in the backyard of a house in a small suburban area. Two children played together, two girls, and they were playing tag. The smaller one was winning, being Aster and the other was complaining aloud. Jessie, come on, slow down a bit. Jessie turned back for only a second and laughed joyously. This is tag, I can't just slow down. Yes you can. Harry chuckled at them and turned to Cupid. Wondering what happened next, she took her bow from her shoulders and mimed notching an arrow, pulling back the string as golden smoke flowed around them. Then, smoke was just beginning to take shape when she loosed the imagined arrow. A flash of gold smoke shot out and split, becoming 2 arrows. One pierced the smaller right over the heart while the other landed just shy of the heart. Cupid winced. What? Harry asked in slight apprehension. What happened? Cupid sighed. I missed the heart, which means the relationship is gonna be rocky for a bit. Why will still fall madly in love and grow old together, but it'll be a rough start. Oh, Harry observed the children for a little longer before turning back to the spirit of love. Will I ever fall in love? I've already shot you 3 times, Cupid chuckled. At Harry's startled look, she continued. Once with a crush, once with puppy love, and then finally with true love. Who? Harry began but trailed off, already knowing. Of course he already knew. The only person he loved that way was the only person it could be. He thought back to the golden arrows. Had Jack seen them? Probably not. Cupid had said she could make herself invisible to spirits when they were first introduced. I think you already know. The children laughed again and Cupid smiled. No matter what gender or race 2 people are, love is fair as is death. Love does not discriminate, only people. Truer words have never been spoken. Harry sighed before latching to her arm dramatically. Now take me back so that I may shower my love with hugs and inane babble. Cupid laughed loudly and blew more dust into the air, taking Harry back to the party. They returned to the strange sight of Chuck and Jack chugging eggnog while Bunny, North, and Henry cheered them on. Jack won the obvious race and slammed his cup down, striking a victory pose. I have defeated this mighty beast. Chuck yelled indignantly while Bunny and North laughed uproariously. Jack spotted Harry and flew to his side, only slightly dazed from a little too much eggnog. Harry, he yelled, pulling him into a half hug. Let's sing a song. A song, Jack? Harry asked in nervousness. I think you are a little drunk. PSSSH. I don't get drunk. I just like your voice. Come on. Jack whined a little, bouncing and bringing his other arm around to finish the hug. Harry giggled as Jack smiled goofily at him. Suddenly, Jack's smile morphed into a mischievous smirk and he locked his arms tightly around Harry's waist. How about the Badger song? Harry's eyes widened and he began to struggle furiously. No, Jock, don't you dare. Jack's smirk only widened as he prepared to belt the most annoying song he knew. Harry wiggled his hand up and slapped it over Jack's mouth. Receiving a slobbery cold lick for his trouble, Harry recoiled in disgust. Oh sick, Jack. The other guardians watched as the 2 obviously in love spirits bantered. Cupid was watching with adoration, seeing as her element was almost suffocating. Harry wiped his hand on Jack's hoodie. Jack was, indeed, singing the Badger song, and just before he came to the Econ mushroom go around, the younger spirit spotted something above their heads. Mistletoe. Harry has never been more thankful for Jack's odd decoration placements, nor would he be thankful for it ever again. Harry took a deep breath before grabbing Jack's front and pulling him down into a kiss. And even though Jack was partially inebriated, it was the most incredible thing Harry had ever experienced. True love really was a fascinating thing. At first Jack had been wide-eyed and unmoving, and Harry had stared into his eyes, which were wide astonished icy blue before they glinted light gold and closed. Jack deepened the kiss and Harry took his hands from his jacket and slid them around his neck, pulling him that much closer. Harry heard a dull thump and opened one eye briefly enough to see that Henry had fainted. Not expecting what had happened, Harry could taste a hint of eggnog in Jack's breath, but it was faint and Jack was holding himself pretty good, which meant he was not so drunk that he would not remember. Their magic whirled around them, causing the others to shiver, but they were so incredibly warm that it didn't matter. It was just the 2 of them. When air became a necessity, Jack K pulled back with a gasp of air and rested his forehead against Harry's. His eyes were half-lidded and love shone there, and Harry was mesmerized. You know, I haven't known you a week and I already can't live without you, Harry whispered. Jack smiled that goofy smile and replied, What can I say? I'm that awesome. Wheel. A voice rang out over their haze. If you two are done buying all lovey-dovey, can we get to the presents now? Cupid glared at Chuck. Oi, let them be. Chuck just rolled his eyes and Jack smiled over at him, pulling back a little from Harry. We might as well. I'm dying to see Harry's reaction anyway. Quote, reaction to what, Jack? Harry asked nervously. He was hoping that no one would actually give him anything, despite the fact that they had said that they were going to. He had nothing for them. Jack gave Harry a look. Your presents, Harry. Yes. North's voice suddenly echoed. Youngest first. As he said this, he brought several gifts over as Jack sat Harry at the couch. He dumped them into Harry's lap gently and could tell instantly that he was a bit overwhelmed, so he gave a reassuring nod to him before backing away, letting Jack take over. Jack saw tea beside him and tugged on present up and held it up to eye level. This is from Tooth. Okay. He gently pried the wrapping back and revealed a small hand mirror engraved with tiny depictions of her mini fairies. It's a memory mirror. I hardly had time to make anything and this was just laying around and I figured you'd like it to keep track of people. It will show you the most recent memories of anyone you ask as long as your intentions are pure. Thank you, Harry said in astonishment. Another gift found its way into his hand and the unwrapping continued. Sandy had not known, so he did know. She get him anything but he gave him a hug. Bunny gave him another egg, this time with a picture of Jack on it. Jack had created an intricate little necklace of ice made to never melt, which he got a kiss on the cheek for, and finally. It was North's gift to be opened. It was larger than the others but not overly so. Harry cautiously pulled the bow and lifted the box lid. A bear sat among sheets of thin paper of all sort of colors. Its eyes were buttons and its mouth was in the stitch of a heart. Plaid covered its pads and ears. It was almost an exact replica of the bear sculpture that Harry had fallen in love with in North's office. It was completed though. He rubbed his palm along the impossibly soft fur and smiled as happiness enveloped him. Wow, North smiled smugly. Though he knew Jack would always win the affection in the long run, he was feeling proud of this temporary victory. Jack was a little jealous that North's present was better, but Harry was happy, so it was okay. Everything would be okay. He had the greatest gift he could ever ask for right there in his arms and he was never letting go. Harry stared listlessly from the frosted windows of Gryffindor Tower, watching the flurries of snow scatter across the grounds. He had always loved snow. There was an immense beauty in the way the flakes seemed to dance on the wind. When all was calm and the last of it was fallen, it was like the angels had weaved a silvery blanket, and although it was cold, he could never help but feel warmth in the comfort of that thought. Angels meant safety, after all. Sometimes, he imagined he could see the angel. When he was younger and his relatives would leave him outside as punishment, he swore he could feel its presence around him. A soft touch here, a whisper there was all it took to keep him fighting through the night. In hindsight, snow had saved his life. Tonight, however, would be different. A tired sigh left his lips in a puff of wispy fog and he shuddered, wrapping Tin arms about his knees as the cold finally settled into his bones. His breath covered the glass and he contemplated drawing a picture, as he used to do when he was little. They would always turn out in some form of a smiling face, perhaps with a tongue to add hilarity. He would say he missed those days, but most of those childish depictions would end in a beating. He definitely did not miss those. Standing on his feet, Harry rubbed his palms together subconsciously to retain some warmth. It was far from ideal, but he was beginning to lose the feeling in his fingers. Not that it mattered much if he was warm or cold. Not anymore. Green eyes scanned the entirety of the dorm, near empty for Christmas break. He didn't really trust the other Gryffindors anyway, except perhaps Neville. Not after what they had done. Thoughts of their wrongdoings only cemented his resolve. Determination glittered in his eyes as he padded over the cold hardwood floor to the fat lady. She swung open without a word, curious eye following him as he went. He nodded politely in thanks, also quiet, for he had nothing to say. His trip through the hall was uneventful, saves for the few minutes he stopped to speak to McGonagall. He was the only Gryffindor to stay behind for break and the only other students there were a few Slytherin and a Hufflepuff. They were all in the Great Hall, as it was dinner, so he mad it to the large doors leading out to the grounds without problems. He took in a steadying breath and exhaled deeply. His eyes were shut tightly to the reality of what he was about to do. But he wouldn't have to deal with it soon enough. He wouldn't have to deal with anything. There would be no more glares in the hallway or accusations for things he hadn't done or couldn't control. He would never have to go back to the Dursleys or be forced to fight anything ever again. Yes, Voldemort was gone. Something had happened, something even Dumbledore could not explain, when the Snake Man had tried to possess him. It was very painful. That's about all he could remember of the incident. But the point was that Voldemort was never coming back. Or so he hoped. Not that it was any of his business any longer. He had done what they had asked. Giving his head a short, fast shake, as if banishing any thoughts further, Harry pulled the large door open just wide enough to slip through. A biting blast frigid winter wind swept his hair back and around, and he found himself wishing he had brought his scarf, despite the circumstances. He may have loved snow, but he had found a profound dislike for the feeling of being cold. Pushing his feelings aside, he trudged forward through shin-high mounds of snow, breaking its pristine surface mournfully. So much work the angel must have put into it, only to be broken by ignorant human beings. Humans like him. Perhaps they took offense, and that is why there were blizzards. He'd have to ask one later. For nearly half an hour he walked, far past the tree line of the forbidden forest and farther still until he came to a little glade which was too peaceful for a place like this. Calming magic hummed in the air and the borrowed rays of the moon shone dimly on the glistening trees. Ferns of frost spread whimsically over every bit of bark and stone, and directly at the center of the clearing, a trickling brook cut a frozen path from the south end all the way through to the north. Unfrozen, the water would have only reached his ankles. With glittering eyes and a heavy heart, Harry sat to wait. He waited and waited, until his pain was numb and his mind sluggish with hypothermia. His lips turned blue and cracked and his eyes had sealed shut with frozen tears shortly after his arrival. He lay on his back, unable to see the moon or the snow but knowing they were there. He subconsciously attempted to go for a warming spell with his wand but remembered two things. He had purposefully left his wand in the common room and he could no longer feel his arm enough to move it. However, he was not scared. No, for this was exactly what he had wanted. After everything that had happened to him, his lost childhood and the destructive betrayal of his closest friends, he was done. He was determined to get out. And what better way to go than surrounded by the only constant comforts he had ever had? The snow and the dark were always there, protecting him when others would not. It was ironic that their shielding embraces should be his deathbed. Sleep began to wash over him, bathing his remaining senses in a sort of barrier where nothing existed but his rapidly slowing pulse. It was admittedly alarming to feel your heart dying but not be in pain. The beat went slower still and his blood flowed lethargically along his veins until, finally, with a tired but content smile, Harry slept. But he did not expect to wake up. Warmth. That was the first thing Harry registered. It was a strange feeling after hours in the cold. Memories surfaced and made him knowledgeable of his previous situation. He had attempted to smother his life in the snow. It must have worked too, for how could he possibly feel such deep warmth from waking after hypothermia? He couldn't. At least, he thought he couldn't. Magic worked in funny ways, though. A sudden intense flash behind his eyelids provoked a flinch from his head and against his will, his eyes shot open. There was the moon. It smiled down on him with shining rays and every bad feeling he had felt before vanished. He felt hope and wonder and such happiness that he had never experienced before stampeded through his body. He no longer felt the need to die. For a moment, all there ever could be was the moon and that intoxicating feeling. But then the rays dimmed and the glade, his supposed place of death, came into focus in his peripheral. Realizing he was on his back, Harry sat up. Everything was the same, yet it felt strange. The feeling of warmth he had been experiencing ever since he woke up had remained, even as the previously glacial winds flew around him, taking spells of snowflakes with it. He brought his hands up, perhaps to see what had become of them in the hours he might have spent asleep, but what he saw made him pause. His skin was pale, almost white where it used to be tanned, and his scars were gone. He could distinctly remember at least 20 on his lower arm. The scar carved int. The back of his left hand by the blood quill was faded to the point where you would have to look for it to see it. With a tiny flicker of hope, he reached up with a shaking hand and felt the area directly in the middle of his forehead. At the feel of the familiar ridge of scar tissue, he let the flame be snuffed out by a raging wave of despondency. Well, that was anticlimactic. He let his hand fall back into his lap with a shuddering sigh. His bangs flipped into his face and he sent a puff of air up in frustration. He reached out to the calming magic he had discovered earlier to keep from possibly screaming in rage. But it wasn't there. No, it was there. That magic was tied to the land, to the trees themselves. They were still there, so why couldn't he feel it? He stood fast, nearly tripping over the snow sounding his feet. He took a deep breath in through the nose and concentrated hard, willing his own magic to find it. It was only then did he realize his magic felt different. It felt very different. It was chaotic and cold but soothing and intermittent with joy and so many different things. It danced, it fluttered, it glided, and above all else, it was uncontrollable. As so much of this foreign magic that he could not contain it. He was scared. All the bad feelings rushed in again with his panic and, unbeknownst to him, it began to snow again. Harry held himself in a hug and tears slipped down his face. He was so confused and frightened. What was happening to him? At first, he had thought it was a simple change in looks. But now he did not understand his own magic or why he had even lived in the first place or why he was warm when he shouldn't be. He stared through his tears at his skin, where not even goose pimples formed at the coldness he knew surrounded him. A tear splashed across his skin and solidified to it, but still it was as if it was lukewarm water. What was he? That's when he heard it, a crooning whisper at the very edges of his subconscious. The words were faint but clear. It spoke to him of his magic and left more questions than it answered. It did tell him what his purpose was though. He was an angel of the snow, a companion or second in command of some sort. Though he was not told for whom. And that was all it said. A snowflake landed delicately on the tip of his nose, causing him to look up. The moon was once again bright and smiling as it moved ever further down the sky. His tears dribbled down to a stop and a small, reassured smile spread across his face. Because when he looked up, he knew it was the moon that had saved him from himself and given him a new, better purpose. And he wasn't afraid anymore.